Let's get started. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. Let's all do it together. In the name of the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit, one God. Amen. How's everybody doing? How's everybody doing? This is like back-to-back weeks where the men's side is just lacking. I know today's Valentine's Day. I didn't know this many dudes had relationships, so there'll be interrogations next week because that's the only reason why you'd miss Friday. It is a big day, it's Valentine's Day, so we appreciate y'all celebrating with us, being here with us, learning the Word of God. I know you guys had a lot of different choices and a lot of different options, but you chose OTYG on a Friday, and so may God bless you for that. So we're going to do our lesson for today, and we're going to continue on with the life of Abraham. So I'm going to do a quick recap for people, because I see some new faces, which is amazing. If you didn't know, this is on YouTube, right? We upload it to YouTube, so please watch and catch up, because it's a journey, right? For you to benefit from this, for you to see really a beautiful growth of Abraham's faith, to see how you can relate to him, you got to be along for the full journey. Like, you will gain wisdom and you'll gain knowledge and the Holy Spirit will work and teach you a few things through these lessons. But unless you follow along from the beginning, you're not really going to, get that transformative experience as much as you could. So we'll do a little recap. So Abraham, as we know, like, his story isn't like like David or like Moses. It's not action-packed. It's not like a lot of wars and big scandals. I mean, there are some, but it's not much like that. It's a pretty short story, but he's known to be the man of faith, right? A lot of people in the Bible, they have like a title that people know them by, right? David was what? Man after God's heart, right? That's what David was. Abraham is the man of faith, or the title of our series, a friend of God, right? That's who Abraham is. And Abraham is like super key because you can make an argument, God works in a lot of ways, so I'm not really going to emphasize that, but you can make an argument that there would be no David, there would be no Moses without Abraham, right? Abraham had nothing to go off of. He just had faith. There was nothing written before him where you could look at it and say, aha, this person followed God, so what excuse do I have? Let me follow God too. He had nothing written down for him, just faith. And like Moses, he did these great things, but he was able to see and hear through oral tradition what Abraham did. So that for sure helped him. Same thing with David, right? All these people after Abraham, they had the benefit of learning from him. But he had this faith that was unmatched. He's first in the faith, meaning nobody had greater faith than him. And he's literally the first person who said, I put my faith in God, right? Despite his circumstances. So this is the person he is. However, he's not perfect, right? So he leaves from his hometown, which is, what's his hometown? He leaves from his hometown, and goes to where? Canaan, right? And we know his story. We know he stops halfway because he brings the whole family with him. He brings his dad, and his dad's let's stop halfway. Let's relax a little bit. And they spent 15 years halfway, and they are not at the promised land. Remember, God said, Abraham, I need you to go. Not your dad, not Lot, not your brothers, not your cousins, just you. But he brought everybody along, and that delays the journey. So they go to the promised land, and when they get there, there's nothing there. There's a bunch of foreigners. Well, they're not foreigners. They're native to that land. Abraham's a foreigner. He doesn't speak their language. He's not going to go in and say, hey, can I stay at your house tonight? Because they'll probably kill him. They don't have a concept of God in their head. Their idea of God is like this, it's like multiple gods. It's idols, right? So they'll probably kill him and then, sacrifice him or something, right? So he's not in a safe space. So he's there and he decides to pitch a tent, and he does that. And this is an amazing thing. It's a beautiful thing. We're like, wow, he has a lot of faith. He left everything. Yeah, he didn't fully obey. Yeah, he brought his family along when he shouldn't. But that's still a big deal. But now he has a trial, right? Something happens, a famine, right? They wake up the next day. There's no food. There's no drink. Wife saying, I'm hungry. He's looking for food. Can't bring nothing. What do? Do you turn to God or do you turn to yourself? When your back is against the wall, what do? Do you turn to God or do you turn to yourself? Abraham, in this situation where he should have turned to God, he turned to himself and he said, I have an idea. Let's go to Egypt. Let's go to Egypt. Back then, Egypt is a land of comfort. Egypt is known to be a prosperous land. It's a godless land. There's no spirituality there, but it's comfortable. It's a really nice land. There's a lot of food. There's no famine. I mean, we see this in the time of Joseph, right? Joseph became second in charge of Egypt. There was a famine back where, where Jacob and his brothers were, and he told them to come to Egypt because it's a great place to be. Even Christ himself, when he was being persecuted, he went with his mother and Joseph to where? Egypt. Egypt's a very comfortable place. But the issue with Egypt is you're putting your trust in the world rather than in God. There was nothing like a big deal about him going to Egypt. It's just that he didn't ask God first. And we see from that's like we do the same thing. When our back is against the wall, when we have nowhere to turn, we turn to ourselves. When really things get tough, we have like this defense mechanism, a built-in defense mechanism. Like Abraham's, by the way, was lying, right? And we'll see that in a second. But we have these defense mechanisms that result in us turning to ourselves rather than turning to God. And so he decides to go to Egypt and big mistakes are happening. Do you guys remember the acronym we said last week? Do you guys remember what it was? It starts with always. What was after that? I know, you guys are just a little shy. It's okay. Always, repeat after me. Always, never, forget, remember. It's kind of ironic, like it's telling you never forget, remember, but y'all like all forgot and didn't remember. Anyways, always, never forget, remember. Always look beyond the immediate positive benefits of a decision. Abraham, he didn't. He looked at the short-term benefits. Okay, if I go to Egypt, we're good. But he makes a couple mistakes in Egypt. Same thing with us. We look at the short-term benefits. If you do that, yes, you'll get pleasure, but you don't know what the consequences will be long-term. Abraham is going to face a lot of consequences by that decision alone. A lot of consequences. Always look beyond the immediate positive benefits of a decision. Never underestimate the potential impacts of your decision now. What you do, the thing with sin, it's really not just impacting you. It impacts those around you and it impacts generations after. Abraham's sin impacts him, generations after, it impacts his wife, it impacts innocent people, and we're going to see today, it actually impacted millions of people. To this day, what Abraham did, by going to Egypt, and then by lying to Pharaoh, it made millions of people fall. To this day. And we'll see that in a second. Always, never, and then forget. Forget about pleasing yourself. That's like the biggest thing that like causes like wars, for example. It's like about me. What can I do for my people, or what I want to do for me as a leader or whatever. But if we all like put each other first, then everybody's good. Because if I'm thinking for you and you're thinking for me, we're both going to make each other happy. We're both going to please God. Forget about pleasing yourself. Self-interested decisions will always cause more pain than pleasure. Always. Last one is, remember you have a bigger purpose. Abraham's life is pretty tough. There's a lot of things God is asking from him. And we may be asking like, why? Why is God asking all this? Because you have a bigger purpose. I said last week, your purpose is not to be, like we want the marriage, the beautiful marriage. And like, that's what we set our goal on. I need a wife, I need a husband. I'm sorry, that is not why God created you. Like, yes, he wants that for you and he would love that for you. And it would be great for you. But that's not why he created you for. Same thing with the jobs. Like, I'm sorry, God did not create you. We made a joke last time. He didn't create you to he didn't create you to become a project manager. He didn't create you to be a software engineer. That's not your purpose for you. These things are great, but God is interested with what that may do for your spiritual life. That's not your end all. But the way we live our life, it's like, okay, if I just get married, then I have peace. If I keep my job, then I have peace. If I have, children, then I have peace. That's not the purpose. Remember, you have a bigger purpose. God is pushing Abraham because he has an amazing purpose for him, to be the father of many nations. If it was up to Abraham, he's like, I just want to be father of one kid. I just want one son. I just want one child. But God's like, no, if you are my child, my purpose for you is greater than what you can imagine. Us, we limit God so much. We're like, God, I just want this job. God's like, no, I want you to do greater things. I want you to be, you're my ambassador on this earth. Like, I chose you. I chose you to be my disciple. What do you mean you just want to, work that 9 to 5? I want so much more for you. So much more for you. So remember, you have a bigger purpose. So then he goes to Egypt, and he starts getting nervous. This is how you know, by the way, you did something that's like not from God. It's like if you make a decision, you start getting nervous, sweaty, knees weak, arms heavy, whatever. That's how you know it's not from God. Is if you start to feel like anxiety after something is done. And so Abraham, as he's going to Egypt, he's getting nervous. And he starts talking to his wife. He's like, Sarah. She's like, yes. Do you mind? First of all, you're beautiful. Did I tell you you're beautiful? Your hair today? Amazing. But when we go to Egypt, can you tell Pharaoh that you're my sister? Why would you want me? So I can live, so he doesn't kill me. Like, I'm a little scared. I know you wanted me to be like your protector or whatever, but like just this one time, like, please protect me. And so he lies to Pharaoh and tells Pharaoh that Sarah is his sister because he's afraid that Pharaoh would kill him if he found out that they were married. Because like I said, Sarah is a beautiful person. And so he lies. And now that God appears to Pharaoh and he says, do not touch the woman. She is married. She's married to my servant. Abraham failed to protect her. Abraham failed to claim her. So God stepped in, protected her, and claimed her for him. Sometimes we think when we sin against God, his wrath is coming. He's going to punish us. It's going to be like game over. When we sin against God, what does he do? He helps us. Abraham is weak. He's trying to do the right thing. But God said, I don't like what you did here. I don't like that you came to Egypt, nor do I like that you lied and didn't claim your wife. You are one flesh with her. That is flesh of your flesh, bone of your bones. I do not like that you tried to deny that, but I'm going to help you. And that's what God does with us. For whatever reason, us, because we're so used to getting hurt by other people, we think God was going to do the same thing to us if we disobey. If you hurt me, I may forgive you once. I may forgive you twice, but eventually I'm going to hurt you back. That's the nature of everybody. God's nature is, you hurt him, he helps you. You hurt him, he helps you. And so he helped Abraham. He got his wife back. And then after that, Pharaoh appears to him, and he gives Abraham not only his wife, but cattle. He gives him animals. He gives him livestock. He gives him male servants and female servants. Repeat after me. Male servants and female servants. Remember that. So, after this, we have Lot introduced, okay? And Lot is a confusing person. We don't know if he's righteous or not. Like, he's like half righteous, half not. He's one of those lukewarm people. He's one of those people that's like, I believe in God, but it's not that important to me. It's like, I'll go to church on the major holidays. Like, I'll go to church on Easter. I'll go to church on Christmas. But, like, I'm not really trying to, I'm not one of those spiritual people. He's one of those people that, like, pray, like, if his, like, somebody else is praying or whatever, but he's not like somebody who seeks a relationship with God. He's living off of secondhand faith. He's living off of Abraham. Remember, he wasn't even called by God to come on this trip. But because Abraham is, like, too attached to him, he brings him along. But Lot is a very lukewarm guy. And so they go back to the land from Egypt, and now there's an argument between Lot's peoples and Abraham's people. There's an argument. Their land is crowded. Lot is saying, hey, man, like, your cows are eating my people's cows' foods. And Abraham's like saying, your cows are eating my people's cow food. Like all these things. They're like fighting over land, and like, Abraham's servants don't have like enough food because Lot's servants are eating all the food and they're taking up all the hot water and everything. And it's becoming an issue. And so Abraham, he says, look, Lot, we're brothers. I'm not going to let this get in between us. I'm going to let you pick. If you say you want to go to the land on the east, then I'll go west. If you say you'll go to the land on the west, then I'll go east. You choose. And we know for sure Lot wasn't Habashah because he just said, okay. Like there was no like, oh no, it's okay. Like you sure? Like let's try, when they're like trying to pay for stuff, they're like, no, I got it. There was none of that. Lot was like, okay. Abraham is approaching it like we're brothers. Lot's like, yeah, we're brothers, but like this is a little too crazy. Like, let me pick the land I want. You sure? Like, he didn't even ask, are you sure? And so Abraham, he goes to like this land that's like, there's nothing there. It's just a tent. Like he pitches a tent and it's just like him and Sarah, whatever. Lot picks some land that's known as Sodom and Gomorrah. Sodom and Gomorrah, by the way, like we hear it now and it's like, it is a negative place, but it was a very like booming place. No pun intended, because it blew up. But it is a very good place. That was a terrible joke. We'll edit that out. But that's where they were. That's where he chose to be. And so the thing with Lot, the issue is he's like us. He looked at the land, and based off what he could see, he made a judgment. Whereas Abraham made a judgment based off of the unseen. Abraham said, whether I'm there or not, it doesn't matter because I trust that God will be with me. So you choose. I'm not focused on the seen. Lot, he's focused on the seen. He doesn't have the faith to focus on the unseen. He chose the worldly comfort rather than God. He didn't think, how could Sodom and Gomorrah impact my spirituality? How could Sodom and Gomorrah impact my children's spirituality? How could Sodom and Gomorrah, what is the worst things that could happen there? He didn't think about it. Instant gratification. That's the same thing with us. We take these new jobs and we don't think about how that's going to be making us so busy we can't come to Friday fellowship. We're going to take these jobs and we're not thinking about how that's going to make us too busy to go to church on Sundays. Same thing with school. Right? God is not going to give you something that's going to make you have less time for him. If you have less time for him, that's not from God. That is not from God. Now, you can pray to God for more time. You can pray to God to create time, because he will. However, if you find that your career, your work, your relationship is pulling you away from God, that's become your Sodom and Gomorrah. That's become your comfort. You focused on the thing that you could see. And God has left. God didn't leave. You left him. Because where was he in your plans? Where was he when you were considering getting that job? Where was he when you were, going into that relationship? Where was he? You'll find yourself in Sodom, and it's only a matter of time until Sodom gets destroyed. One of my favorite books in the Bible. It's not the right slide. Yeah, these aren't the right slides. It's okay. We're not going to have slides today. Hope that's okay with everybody. One of my favorite verses in the Bible, or favorite books in the Bible, comes from Ecclesiastes. Okay? Ecclesiastes, you guys know who wrote it? Solomon. And Solomon is such an interesting character, because he became a saint, but his life was wild. He had 300 wives, 700 concubines. He would drink a lot. He would have a lot of parties. He had the biggest house. His toilet seat was made out of gold and all these things. He's bathing in spring water. He was just living lavishly. Everything was great. And then he gets old and he writes these books, Ecclesiastes being one of them. And he's looking back at his life and he's like, wow, all of that was pointless. He says this: I denied myself nothing my eyes desired. I refused my heart no pleasure. My heart took delight in all my labor, and this was the reward for my toil. Yet when I surveyed all that my hands had done, and what I had toiled to achieve, everything was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. Nothing was gained under the sun. He's looking out at everything he achieved. All the riches, all the women, all the parties. And he's saying, nothing was achieved. This was all vain. And that's going to be our realization if we're pursuing these worldly things. Because guess what? Yes, going out is fun. Partying is fun. But guess what? Monday's always going to come. Reality hits. It's fleeting. It goes away. Your work. You work these jobs and you're making a lot of money. You make all this money. You're able to buy the house. Guess what? One day your house may get termites. It's gone. Guess what? You may lose your job. That's the whole vainness of this world. It's you try to achieve all these things. Solomon is telling you, don't focus on this world. I accomplished it all. You're trying to get rich? I got rich. You want to buy a house? I had the biggest house. You want to have fun and have parties? I had all the parties. You want to get girls? I had all the girls. It did nothing for me. I'm still unhappy. His ending, Lot's ending, is going to be all of our endings if we chase the worldly things. So next after this, Abraham's in his little tent while Lot is in the Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot is chilling in a house. Like, he's chilling. He's good. He got a bed. His family got a bed. Abraham, he's in a tent. And so this is when God appears to Abraham again. And he says this, "The Lord said to Abraham after Lot had parted from him, 'Look around you and where you are, to the north and to the south, to the east and the west.'" So Abraham's looking around him. He's looking at all this land. And then God says, "All the land that you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I'm giving it to you." So Abraham went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he pitched his tents. There he built an altar to the Lord. This is how the promises of God are. Abraham, he started this journey saying, "I just want one son. Like, God, my wife can't have kids. We haven't had children. Please, one son." When you separate yourself from God, God blesses you abundantly. God said, "One son. I'm going to make it so your descendants outnumber the dust of the earth." And that's a fact. You know that happened. Abraham existed. Abraham's a real person. You know the Abrahamic religions? Jews say Abraham is my father. Muslims say Abraham is my father. Christians say Abraham is my father. God held up this promise. Literally, Abraham's descendants outnumber the dust. When you choose to separate yourself from God, God has no issue with blessing you more than your dreams could imagine. As soon as there was separation, the voice of God returned. Remember, when he separated from his father, God appeared again. Now when he's separating from Lot, God appeared again. When you separate yourself from God, for God, you can hear him clearly. Blessings come in, but it requires separation. Separation from what? The world. How can you hear God's voice clearly when you're surrounding yourself by the world? The YouTube shorts, the TikTok, if it's legal. I don't know if it's up or not. How are you going to hear his voice? If you're constantly hearing Kai Cenat or something, how are you going to hear his voice? I expose myself. How are you going to hear his voice? You got to have some separation. That's how you hear his voice. Abraham, if you haven't caught this right now, he has clearly like this issue with loneliness. Like, he fears being alone. Like, he brought his whole family. Like, he brought his own dad. Like, they're idol worshipers, by the way. Like, he knows they're wrong. But like, imagine, like, he's fearful. Going to a foreign land by himself. He doesn't want to be alone. It saddened him to lose Lot. He didn't want to lose Lot. But separation was required. Abraham was comforted. God says, "I know you're fearful of being lonely. I'm here for you. I'm going to comfort you. Remember my promise. Your descendants will outnumber the dust of the earth. Just continue. Keep going. Yes, you lost Lot, but I'm with you. Keep going." To feel the comfort of God, you need separation. To feel the comfort of God, you need separation. Now, I'm not saying like cut people off. That's not the separation I'm talking about. I mean, like, I want you to be separate for God, not separate from the world. That's different. I want you to be separate for God, meaning you're saying, "God, I'm available. Do with me whatever you want to do. I am here for you. Whatever you want to do, I will do it." Abraham, again, he's not perfect. God said, "I want you to be separate." He brought the whole family. God slowly worked with Abraham and built him to be comfortable with separation. Separation is a very fearful thing. Like, loneliness is a real thing. Especially like in the Seattle climate in the winter, it's tough. But that's when God shows you his comfort. That's when God shows you his blessing. Think about it. Like, you know the saying of like, you know, if both, like, how can I like put out the fire at your house if my house is burning? That kind of thing. Like, how are you going to be able to comfort other people if you haven't already, like, you know, separated yourself from God? Like, if we're all struggling, how are we going to help each other? But when you separate yourself from God, God uses you to help people. But if you don't separate yourself, how are you going to help people? There's no way to do it. Like Noah, for example. Noah lived at a time where everybody was unrighteous. He separated himself for God. God said, "Tell the people there will be a flood." And he tried to tell all these people, and only 8 people listened. Everybody else didn't listen. To save others, to help others, you need to be separate for God. To realize what your purpose is, you need to be separate for God. I told you guys, like, your purpose is so much greater than what you're telling yourself it is. Greater than your job, greater than the relation, greater than buying the house. To understand why God created you. Don't you want to know, why did you make me, God? The answer to that is found in separation. Because his purpose for you, just how big Abraham's purpose is, his purpose for you is as big. It takes separation to find out. Everyone hates loneliness, but this is required for spiritual growth. But I'll tell you this, it's only hard if you don't focus on the reward. It's only hard if you don't focus on the reward. The beauty of our Lord is, he doesn't ask you to do anything in vain. It has a reward. There's a purpose behind your suffering and your time of separation. There's a purpose behind your loneliness. There's a purpose behind it. Our God doesn't put things in your life or make you go through things without a purpose. That's why we never lose hope as Christians. There is a purpose for it. True story. So, back in the day, in college, a long time ago, I was like starting like my Christian journey, right? Like I had left for a little bit and I'm like, you know what? Like life kind of sucks. Like let me like experience this whole God thing. Let me try this whole church thing, whatever. And so I'm going back into the church and all these things. And I remember it's Good Friday. It's my sophomore year in college. And so I like went to church and I just stood in the back. I had no idea what was going on. Like they were carrying like sticks in their hands and like some people were hitting kaburo and stuff and like they're singing Muslim or whatever. I had no idea what was happening. Like this is like my first time like really looking at a Good Friday service. And so I go and I come home and during this Good Friday service, not during this Good Friday service, on this Good Friday, I come back home to my dorm. I had a couple roommates and like our dorm is like, unfortunately, it's like this spot. It was where people would go to. That's where people would have fun. And so back then, I don't know, I think there's still a thing, but there was a thing called Afro-Caribbean night. Are we familiar with that? Okay, if you know too much. Anyways, there was this thing called Afro-Caribbean night. And after it, there's a party. And that party is usually like the biggest party of the whole year. Not party, gathering. The social gathering. It's the biggest social gathering of the year. And everybody's talking about it. There's people coming into my dorm saying, yo, Abel, are you going to come? Are you coming? I'm like, no, I'm separate for God. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to stay home. And they are like, you sure? I'm like, yep, I'm separate. And so they're all like getting ready to go. And I'm like, I'm going to stay home. It's Good Friday. I'm going to watch Passion of the Christ. And like, I'm going to chill. And it's like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. And my phone keeps buzzing. Snapchat, 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 Snapchat. And they're all like, sending stuff in the group chat like, oh, like, where's Abel at? Like, it's lit, all these kind of things. I'm like, all right, whatever. I go on Instagram. I kid you not, like every story back to back to back is like at that party. Gathering. And I'm like, gosh, like one tear like came down my eye. Like I'm like, oh man, this is tough. And so they come back and like they're telling stories about the gathering. Like, bro, he was like on top of the roof and he like dived off of the roof, like crazy stuff. And I'm like, what, really? Like he died off? Like, yeah, like you missed out. I'm like, oh man. And so throughout this week, that really troubled me. I'm like, am I like missing out? Like I'm in college, I have like 2 more years. Like I'm young, I'm like 20 at this time. And I start thinking about it, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go out the next Friday. And so there's something going on. They all go out. I get ready. I'm like, I'm going to surprise them. And so I go to the party, and everybody's like shocked. They're like, whoa, like Abel's back. I'm like, yeah, I'm back. Like, here I am, like, what are we doing? What's the move? Whatever. Like, I'm excited. I'm like, where's the juice? Like, I'm really excited, right? And they're like getting the idea that like I'm uncomfortable because like I'm trying too hard. Like, I'm, like, trying way too hard to, like, act normal, to look like, whatever. Like, I fit in there. And one of the people was, like, he cracked a joke. He's like, damn, like, welcome back, bro. Like, it's good to see you. I thought you were going to become a priest. And I'm like, a priest? Me? Stop. Like, come on. Like, I'm one of you guys. Like, let's do it. And then as the night goes on, if you know me, like, when I detach or, like, when I disconnect, I go on my phone, and I just, like, scroll through my phone. Like, I'm in, like, a corner. And so I'm sitting down, and somebody comes up to me. He's one of my friends as well. He's like, bro, just go home. And I'm like, excuse me? He's like, just go home. He's like, it's obvious you're not comfortable here. It's obvious you're not comfortable. Like, just go home. Like, I respect what you're doing, and I'm proud of you. Like, keep doing what you're doing. but just go home. And I just went home. But that was the comfort of God. I was feeling lonely. I was feeling separated. And that separation became a burden. I'm like, all my friends are having fun. I'm young. God comforted me and told me to go home. God will comfort you in your loneliness, in your separation. He will be there. Always. So after this, Abraham is in his tent. Lot is in Sodom and Gomorrah. And there's a war in that region. Okay? There's a war in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah. There's multiple kings in that region. So some kings decided they wanted to overthrow other kings. And the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah, they get defeated. Lot is in Sodom and Gomorrah. So people kidnap him. They loot his house. They burn everything down. It's a big deal. Only one person survives. And that one person, he runs to Abraham's house and he says, Lot has been kidnapped. Lot and his family has been kidnapped. What do you think Abraham's going to say? I mean, think about it. Abraham should be like, okay, that's fine. I got a wife to worry about. I'm old. You told me to go to what? What am I supposed to do? Am I Superman? What do you want me to do? I can't do anything. In fact, I remember when I offered him the other land, he didn't even try to say, oh no, let's talk about it. He just took it. He has every reason to be bitter, every reason to be upset. But it says he does this. When Abraham heard that his relative had been taken captive, he called out the 318 trained men born in his household and went in pursuit as far as Dan. During the night, Abraham divided his men to attack them, and he routed them, pursuing them as far as Hobah, north of Damascus. He recovered all the goods and brought back his relative Lot and his possessions, together with the woman and the other people. In our culture, in our society, there's this mindset of, let me take care of myself first. If you want to make that sound spiritual, you'll say, let me pour into my cup first. But this is very Western mindset. The mind of orthodoxy is always focused on my neighbor. We actually posted something on our Instagram today, a quote from St. Anthony. Your salvation is found in your neighbor. Heaven is found in your neighbor. The keys to God's heart is found in your neighbor. Yet we have come up and twisted it into something that sounds pretty, saying, let me pour into my cup first. God pours into your cup when you pour into your neighbor. That's why Abraham, even though his wife can't have a kid, even though he's not himself, he doesn't know how to fight. He's not trained in war. That's not his skill. He's a shepherd. He said, I need to go to my neighbor because then I will find my Lord there. A man of faith helps those in need. A man of faith helps those in need because he trusts that God will help him. He trusts that God will help. So Abraham, he frees them, he wins the war, and they're super happy. And they're like, Abraham, what do you want? We can pay you. We can give you all these goods. You can have a new house. What would you like? And Abraham said, I don't want anything. My God called me to be separate. My God asked me to be set aside from him. If I take stuff from you, you're going to say, oh, you took stuff from me, therefore you owe me something. I don't need anything. God will provide. God will provide. Keep in mind, he needs stuff. It's him and his wife. He's living in a tent. He needs stuff. He says, God will provide. I'm separate. I'm not even supposed to be here. I'm here because I needed to save my brother. But I don't need anything from you. God will provide. Keep in mind the transition now. When there was a famine, did he say God will provide? No, he went to Egypt. Do you see the growth? Now he's saying, I don't need anything from you. God will provide. You see how gentle and patient God is? God is not asking for Abraham to be this huge man of faith immediately. He's patient with him, just like he's patient with you. You're hearing this story and you may be saying, this is crazy. God is patient with you. He wants people who are willing, people to raise their hand and say, I'm willing. Do with me what you please. And he will be with you through the journey, through the bumps, through the rides, through the ups and downs. He's there. Abraham, he just made a mistake a chapter ago. But now he corrected the mistake. Why? Because God is with him. God is with him. There's something actually in this chapter that a lot of people skim over. Abraham actually, before he goes to war, he went to seek the advice of somebody. He went to seek the blessing of somebody. Have you heard of somebody named Melchizedek? I butchered the name. Melchizedek. Have you heard of that name? Yes, I've heard of that, right? Now, Melchizedek is like a very interesting figure in the Bible. Very, very interesting. He comes out of nowhere. Like, it doesn't say, like, necessarily, like, his lineage or anything. He's just, like, a very obscure, like, random person. But he's a righteous person. He's a righteous person. Melchizedek, it means king of righteousness. And ironically, he comes from a place called Salam, king of peace, right? Or he's the king from Salam, which means peace. His name means king of righteousness. And his thing is so unique because he's a priest and a king. Now, if you read the Bible, kings come from a specific tribe. They come from the Levitical tribe, Levites. Back then, there was no tribe called that. This is before there was tribes. So this priest, he's not from that tribe. And kings of God at least, they come from the tribe of Judah. Are you guys with me? Priests come from the tribe of Levi. Kings come from the tribe of Judah. This guy, Melchizedek, he's not from either. Yet he's a king and a priest. You know who this is an example of? Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is the high priest. What does a high priest do? A high priest offers a sacrifice on behalf of the people. Jesus Christ offered himself as a sacrifice. To who? To himself. He's God. But he's also a king. He was born in Judah, but he's not a king from Judah. He's a king from the heavens. He's the king from the heavens. So just like Melchizedek, he's not a traditional king in the sense that he's from Judah. He's not a priest in the sense that he's from the Levi tribe. And you know what's even crazier about the story? When Abraham is talking to him, Melchizedek has bread and wine. Where do we see bread and wine? In the New Testament. This is like the first big foreshadowing of Christ. This is the amazing thing about the Bible. It's filled with clues. If you read carefully, it has these clues. Melchizedek is the first sign of Christ. A priest, a king, offering bread and wine. He talked to this priest first, and that's how he was able to go to war. That's how he had the courage. It's the same thing with us. There's this verse that says, our people are destroyed by a lack of knowledge. Our people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. In the Ethiopian and Eritrean community, I think this verse applies, especially when it comes to Holy Communion. Especially when it comes to Holy Communion. We think the devil has caused us to twist our mindset. Yes, there's you have to prepare for it. You have to confess. All these things, you have to do it. However, we think, once I stop sinning, then I can take the Holy Communion. That is so much pride. It's the Holy Communion that helps you stop sinning. You're saying, no, I don't need the Holy Communion. I'll stop sinning first, then I will take it as a reward. When God is saying, it's the Holy Communion, it's my flesh and blood that helps you overcome the sin. But we twisted it. It's the flesh and blood of Christ that helps you overcome your fears, like it helped Abraham overcome his fears. It's this flesh and blood that helps you overcome your anxiety, your stresses. But we're like, nah, let me take care of X, let me take care of Y, let me take care of Z. Once I do that, I'll reward myself with the flesh and blood of Christ. That's pride. Now, I'm not saying just take it willy-nilly. You approach it with reverence. You talk to your spiritual father. Abraham did that. He talked to the priest before he made a decision. It's the same thing with us. So after the war, and I'm almost done. Are you guys with me? Are we good? You guys tired? We good? I said, are y'all tired? Some people nodded. So after the war, Abraham, imagine, he's 85 at this point. Okay, he started the journey at 60, 15 years in Haran, 75, and now it's been 10 years. Now he's 85, okay? 85 in that range. And he still doesn't have a kid. He started this journey, he's kind of mesquite. He's like, oh, I'm going to get a kid when I go there. That didn't happen. There's no kid yet. And now he's 85. His wife is still unable to have children. He just went to war. He's not a man of war. He saw people die. He almost died. He's thinking, God, what the heck are you putting me through? What am I going through right now? What did I sign up for? He's having all these kind of things. And then it said this, again, when you're in your doubt, when you're in your famine, when you're in these states of anxiety, God appears to you. God says this to him, do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield, and I am your great reward. Remember what I said. Your struggle is not vain. Your struggle for separation, your struggle for blessing is not vain. There's a purpose behind it. There's a reward behind it. Christ is your reward. He says, I am your reward. Do not be afraid. And previously, when God would talk to Abraham, Abraham would be like, good, nice, okay, let's keep going. But this time, he's like, I got some questions, God. Like, I've been through a lot. I got some questions. Like, I love what you said, and I believe it, and I have faith in you. I'll continue to do what you need me to do. But I have some questions. So this son you're telling me about, this son you're saying I'm going to have, is it going to come from one of my servants? Is it going to come from one of my male servants? Is this like a riddle? Like, you're going to give me a son through my male servant, and I'm going to raise that son? Is that what you're saying? Because this isn't making sense. I'm getting older and older and older. It's been 15 plus years. How are you going to make this happen? Like, he's starting to, he's starting to get anxious. And you can't blame him. Nobody has received a promise like this before. Nobody's had to go just off of faith. Abraham's the only one. So he's saying, God, I need some answers. I have some questions. And so he's starting to lose faith. He's starting to give up. Like, God is going to appear to him, and I'll tell you what he says, but I want to speak to you guys a little bit about this. When you start to lose faith and you start to wanting to give up, like we will pray for a day or a week, and if it doesn't happen, we give up. We'll pray for a year, maybe. But if it doesn't happen after a year, we give up. You know what God's interested in? Somebody who keeps knocking on his door. Somebody who's patient enough to wait. God has no issue with giving you the blessing. It's just that if he gives it to you, you're going to forget about him. If he gives it to you, you're not going to learn patience. If he gives it to you, you're not going to learn to be long-suffering. So he will let you keep knocking because he has you built for a bigger purpose. The purpose isn't for him to just give you the blessing. The purpose is to see what that waiting for the blessing will do for you. That's why. It says this in the Gospel of Matthew. Which of you, if your son asks for bread, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will give him a snake? If you then, though you are evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven give good gifts to those who seek him? He's saying, you being evil, if someone's hungry to them, you're going to give them food. Me being righteous and loving, how much more will I give to those who seek me? Imagine you're in a house, right? And you have this neighbor you really hate, and this neighbor is weird. He'll knock on your door every day to say hello, good morning, whatever. And he keeps knocking on your door, keeps knocking on your door, keeps knocking on your door, and you're like, I'm just going to ignore it, he's going to leave. And he keeps knocking, he keeps knocking, he keeps knocking. Eventually you're going to do what? You're going to open the door. Why? You want him to leave. It's the same thing with God, except God doesn't open it because he wants us to leave. He wants you to keep knocking because he's trying to build virtue within you. There's a difference between material, earthly blessings and virtue. God is interested in building virtue, not giving you earthly blessings. He'll do it if it's on the process of building virtue. Don't give up on your prayers. And the beautiful thing about prayers is prayers are eternal. I used to think if I'm not the best driver. So I got a Tesla so it could drive for me. And so now it's all good. But before that, I'm not a good driver. I would rear end people. And I would drive away. I know I'm bad. I will confess it soon. And I will park the car and whatever. I'm the dude that's driving and I'll go on a curb. Oops, I wasn't a good driver at all. But sometimes I'll be get in an accident. I'll hit a car or something. I'll scrape the car and I'll be dang it, it's because I didn't pray this morning. Sometimes when things happen, you feel attention. It's because I didn't go to church last night or something. Some people think like that. That's not how God works. Your prayer is eternal. The prayer you prayed 10 years ago is still on the throne of God. Prayer is beyond this box of time. It's outside of time. The things that you're experiencing now, the blessings you're experiencing now, is from the prayers of your grandmother 100 years ago. This is the power of prayer. Don't give up on your prayer. Keep knocking. Keep asking. You will receive. You will find him. Don't give up on it. Your job is to be faithful. You're not entitled to know the ways in which God will work or when he's going to work. Just be faithful and know he's working. That's sufficient. So God, he appears to him again he's comforting Abraham. Abraham is asking questions. And he says, your descendants will outnumber the stars in the sky. You're asking for a son. I'm telling you, Abraham, are you listening to me? Your descendants are going to outnumber the stars in the sky. And it said this, Abraham believed God, and he counted it to him for righteousness. This is the first time in the Bible that it says the word believed. And it said it counted it for him as righteousness. What does Abraham go on to do after? Let's spoil it. What does he do? What's the big mistake he does? He sleeps with who? Hagar. This is written before that. It said God counted him as righteous. Does God not know that Abraham's going to do it? God knew Abraham's going to sleep with Hagar. And he still said he's righteous. How? Righteousness is not about not sinning. It's about holding on to God in the midst of your sin. Can I repeat that? Righteousness is not about not sinning. It's about holding on to God in the midst of your sin. That's why he called him righteous, knowing that he's going to sleep with Hagar. We think we do something bad. Oh, God is done with me. Like, that's it for me. That's not how God works. And it said Abraham believed. Like I said, Abraham's faith continues to grow. But then Abraham's like, I'm not done, God. I have another question. I need a sign. Like, Sarah is bugging me. Like, what am I going to tell Sarah? Like, I need a sign. Give me something. And so God's like, okay, take some animals, take some birds, cut them in half, put them on like the center of the city, and I'm going to make a covenant with you. A covenant back then is like an agreement between two people. Like, if you do this, then I will do this. And they would cut the animals to say, like, if you don't hold your end of the deal, then you will be cut like this animal. And so Abraham's like, okay, here's these animals. I cut them up. God, like, what are you going to do? Like, are you going to take the animals up? Are you going to, like, bring down fire and, like, accept the sacrifice? What's going to happen? He waits for an hour. Nothing happens. He waits for 2 hours. Nothing happens. He waits for 3 hours. Nothing happens. He waits till sundown, and now vultures are coming in. You guys know what vultures are? Vultures, like, they eat, like, leftovers, right? Vultures are coming in. At this point, if you're Abraham, like, you're giving up. You're like, God, this is too much. Like, now there's these birds, these huge birds. Like, birds are terrifying, by the way. Like, especially if they're, like, around you and they're not leaving. That's the scariest thing. I'm speaking from experience. But these vultures are coming in. At this point, Abraham, like, he should just go home. Like, he looks like a crazy guy. His wife's looking out the window. There's dead animals. He's, like, chasing birds. Like, imagine if you see this. A fool for Christ, right? Becoming a fool for Christ. He looks like a fool. But instead of leaving, you know what he does? He chases the vultures away. Like, no, like, get out of here. God is going to bless me. God is going to bless me. God is going to bless me. Chasing the vultures away. When you're waiting for God, when you're waiting on your prayers to be answered, these vultures will come. Vultures of doubt. Is God even real? Is God really going to do this for me? That's a vulture. You chase it away. Leave. Vultures of disappointment. I thought God was a loving God. How could a loving God let this happen to me? I am disappointed. You chase that vulture away. Leave. God's going to bless me. The thing with vultures is you can't stop them. They'll always be there. But you can stop them from landing. You can stop them from making a home in you. You can stop that doubt from growing into your heart. You can stop that, disappointment from growing into your heart. You can stop that by shooing it away. Leave. No, God is there. God is my shepherd. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Telling yourself these things. And the vultures leave. The reason why we give up is because we let the vultures land, make a home for themselves, have children, have children's children, and that's it. So after this, Abraham falls into a deep sleep. He's waiting, nothing happens, he falls into deep sleep. I think he probably had a good cry. Like he cried a lot. Like when you were a kid and you did something bad and you got whooped, and you're crying, you sleep and you wake up in your bed and you're like, what happened? Like, this is the best sleep I ever had, right? If you're a crier, I'm not a crier. If you're a crier, after that sleep you get, it's a different type of sleep. It's a different type of sleep. So it says he fell into deep sleep. I'm assuming he's broken. I'm just assuming that he probably was crying. He probably was at the end of his kind of capacity. He was crying. And so Abraham, in his sleep, God appears to him and he says this, Abraham, I'm going to let you in on a secret. You're my friend. We're friends here. You're a friend of me. You're a friend of God. I'm going to tell you a secret. Let me tell you this prophecy. Because I already told you you're going to have kids, but let me give you insider scoop onto something else. And he tells him this. Know for certain that for 400 years your descendants will be the strangers in a country not their own, and they will be enslaved and mistreated there. But I will punish the nation they serve as slaves, and afterward they will come out with great possessions. You, however, will go to your ancestors in peace and be buried at a good old age. In the fourth generation, your descendants will come back here, for the sin of the Amorites has not yet reached its full measure. He's like, I'll let you in on a secret. Your children's children, they're actually going to be back in Egypt, and they're going to be slaves for 400 years, right? I want you to know this is going to happen, but you're going to live a good old age. You're going to die in peace. And he's showing Abraham how vast his wisdom is. He's telling Abraham, relax. I have all this planned out. Don't believe me? Let me tell you what's going to happen for 400 years. By the way, this happened, right? You guys know, the Israelites became slaves under Egypt. He's telling him that prophecy. Saying, look, man, I have everything at the palm of my hands. Just trust me here. Trust me here. What do we learn from this? First, God, he's not offended by our questions. You can ask God questions. Please ask him, God, why is this happening? Why are you doing this? There's nothing wrong with asking those questions. In fact, the Psalms are filled of it. David is constantly crying, saying, God, why would you do this to me? Why would you have left me? Aren't you righteous? Aren't you loving? Where's your compassion? That's what the Psalms are filled with. Ask God questions. You're his son. You're his daughter. You have every right to say, God, why? Why is that revealed to me? Now, what happens after the questions becomes the sin. If you're asking these questions and then you lose hope, that's not the point of the questions. You ask questions with hope. David, after he asked questions, at the end of the Psalm, it would say, I will still praise you. I don't know what you're doing. I don't even like what you're doing. My enemies, they're at my door. I'll still praise you though. Because somehow, some way, your plan is vast. So ask God your questions. Second, God may delay your blessing, but he never cancels it. There's nothing you could do that will take away from the blessing he has for you. You may delay it, and he may delay it. And the beauty thing is, even if you delay it, he turns that delay into a blessing in itself. God would love to give you something sooner rather than later. You may delay it, but he'll make the delay a blessing by teaching you patience, by teaching you to continue to struggle for righteousness. 1 Peter chapter 6, verse 7. In all this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief and all kinds of trials. Let me stop right there. For a little while you may have had to suffer grief and all kinds of trials. Your suffering in this world is just a little while. It's just a moment compared to the eternity God has for you. If you go to heaven, you're going to ask a lot of people about their trials, about their grief, and they will say, it was worth it. My separation from God was worth it. My loneliness was worth it. Because it was just a moment. That's what it is. Your suffering on this earth is just a small moment compared to the eternity God has for you. God just wants you to trust him. This is the thing. God has given each and every one of us promises. The question is, do you believe it or not? Do you believe that God has an inheritance for you? Yes or no? If yes, keep on trusting because you're going to get it. If no, you missed out. Do you believe or not that God has a room for you in his kingdom of heaven for you? Yes or no? If yes, keep going. If not, you're missing out. It boils down to that. Do you believe or not that God is your father who loves you, who will give you anything, who's willing to do that, who's willing to give you his own kingdom? Do you believe it or not? If yes, keep going. If not, you're missing out. He wants you to trust him. Lastly, God's plan is for your good, not for your destruction. God's plan is for your good, not for your destruction. Like I said, a life of blessing doesn't come easy, but it's worth it. Abraham would say it's worth it. Isaac would say it's worth it. David and Moses would say it's worth it. It's worth it. I'm almost done. We just can't get behind on this series. Are we good? Give me 5 minutes. Deal? We good? Can y'all take it? If I don't see more nods, I'm going to... Okay, we're good. Give me 5 minutes, okay? So now this interaction with God happens. And after this, it's been another 10 years. Okay? No, it's been 10 years in this whole story that I'm telling you right now. So Abraham right now is 85. 85. Sarah's 75. She's 10 years younger. Still no kid. Now, Abraham, he has a dilemma. According to that, like, his dilemma is, like, he's getting old. Like, he's like, I'm not going to have time to have this child. Like, if I have this child, I'm not going to have energy for this child. I'm getting old. And actually, according to that culture, by the way, like, we know he sleeps with Hagar, right? But according to the culture, you're allowed to sleep with a servant. If you can't have kids, you can sleep with a servant, and your servant can give you a child, and you can raise the child as your own. You could do that. And so now Abraham starts thinking to himself, maybe God wants me to, like, pursue this promise. Maybe God, like, wants me to, like, fight for it a little bit more. Maybe I've been too lax. Maybe I should take matters into my own hands. And so Abraham, he's thinking these things. But he's like, no, I love Sarah. I'm not going to do it. But Sarah comes along, and you know what she tells him to do? She says, do it. She says, go sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can build a family through her. Now, temptation's already hard on its own. But when temptation comes from people you love and respect, game over. Like, you're already dealing with your own temptation. Now, somebody you respect and honor and, like, love does something, game over. You're going to fall. Abraham is fighting this temptation for sure. Because everybody in that culture would have slept with their servant and had a child years ago. It's in his mind. It has to be. But he's fighting these thoughts. He's saying, no, God has a promise. God said, whatever. But he starts thinking, like the vultures, they start coming in. He starts thinking, God said, I would be the father. He didn't say Sarah would be the mother. And he's, like, thinking these things. Like, again, these are the vultures. But Sarah tells him to do it. And sure enough, he does it. True story. So back in high school, we would go to the QFC for lunch, right? Like, we would drive to lunch, and we'd go to QFC. It was me, my good friend, and then two, like, other friends. It's me, my good friend, and two other friends, okay? So we would go to the QFC, and you'd go to the deli. So the deli, like, it has, like, popcorn chicken and everything, and, like, all this stuff. You'll get food. They put it in a bag. They put a tag on it, the price tag. You walk to the cashier, and you pay for it. Now, my two other friends, not my close friends, my two other friends, they would walk to the back of the QFC, take the price tag off, and then walk out the store. They were stealing popcorn chicken. It was like $3. I don't know, whatever, but high school, right? They're stealing popcorn chicken. Me, I'm terrified. I'm not doing that. I'm like, I'm going to pay for it. Like, I'm going to pay for it. My mom gave me money. I'm going to use it. I'm going to pay for it. And me and my friend, we would do this for a while. Eventually, now my good friend says, I'm not paying today. Like, they haven't got caught all quarter. I'm not going to pay today. And I'm like, what? And I'm like, okay, if you're not paying, I'm not going to pay. And so we do the thing. We get our popcorn chicken. We're going to the back of the store. I'm trying to peel the tag off. The tag is, like, not coming off. It's because my hand is shaking. Like, this is by far the most illegal thing I've ever done. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what's going to happen? And so, like, I'm struggling to pull it off. My arm's shaking, my leg's shaking. Anywho, I got it off. And so we're walking to the exit now. I'm trying to play it cool. I'm sweating. It's really like, I think I'm going to go to prison. Like, it's like, I'm terrified. And we're walking out, and we hear a voice that says, hey, you. And so my friends, the ones I'm not that close with, they've done this so often, they just run. Me, I'm like, yes, sir. Like, yes, what do you need? And he's like, did you pay for it? And I'm, like, trying to gather my words. I'm shocked. And my other friend starts crying. It may have been me crying. I'm not going to say it was me, though. It was my friend. My other friend starts crying. He's like, please, like, I'm just in high school. Like, I have dreams of going to college. He stole popcorn chicken. I don't know. He started freaking out. And me, I'm like, I'm sure we can come to, like, a reasonable conclusion. Like, let's work something out. Like, I'm sorry. Like, we'll pay for it. Like, whatever. Please forgive us. Whatever. Anywho, we got off the hook. But my point in the story was, me, it was no big issue. My friends who I wasn't close with would steal. Me, I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do it. But the moment my close friend did it, I did it. The people who impact you are the people closest to you, especially if you're somebody in the church. At some point, when you start going to church often and that becomes your lifestyle, you're like, man, I'm not going to the hookah bar. Man, I'm not going to the club. It's like, it's just not you anymore. But you get tempted by other things. Now you get in the church. You're a church head now. And now they start gossiping. Did you hear what that deacon did? Did you hear who he was with? Did you hear what she did? Whatever. And you start gossiping in that because you feel comfortable. Because now people who look like you are doing something, you fall into another sin. It can come from so many different ways. That's why you have to keep your guard up. Temptation is impossible when it comes from people you trust. Now I have a question for you guys before I wrap up. Who's in the wrong? Abraham or Sarah? Raise your hand if it's Abraham's fault. I see 2 hands, 3 hands, 4 maybe. Raise your hand if it's Sarah. Okay, a little bit more. Raise your hand if it's Sarah's fault. Raise your hand if you don't know. If y'all were watching a movie, you would know. Like it's like if this happened in a movie, somebody's wife said, sleep with this girl. He said, okay. You know, it is Abraham's fault. It is Abraham's fault. Why? Remember I told you last week, Abraham lied to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh rewarded him with animals, cattle, male servants, female servants. One of those female servants was Hagar. His lie, you see what sin does, the effects it has on other people, how it just keeps going. His sin, his lie, his little bit of a lie, just say him yourself, caused Hagar to be in that situation with him, and it allowed him to sleep with her. If he never lied in the first place, Hagar would never be there. Sarah, yes, she offered the suggestion. She's desperate. Abraham, regardless, shouldn't have done it, but it happened because Abraham lied. You see how these sins are just like, they continue to like have greater impacts than you could imagine? By the way, they have a son. His son's name is Ishmael. Ishmael is considered the father of Arabs. Ishmael is considered a father of Muhammad. Muslims, when they look at the story of Abraham, it goes from Abraham, not to Isaac, but to Ishmael. You can say due to Abraham's lie, a whole other religion started. This is what I meant in the beginning when I said it has impacts for generations. Millions of people would be impacted to this day because of Abraham's lie. Because he chose to sleep with Hagar, Ishmael was born, who's considered the father of Muhammad. That's the impact of sin. Generations to generations. That's why it's so toxic, it's so dangerous. It doesn't just start with you and stop with you. It keeps going. And you know what they said? When it first happened, and she got pregnant, and they found out, they're like, God blessed our decision. God approves. If she wasn't pregnant, then that means God didn't approve. But because she's pregnant, God approved. Common sense. God is happy. Glory be to God. Like God allowed this to happen. Common sense. Our common sense is garbage. Excuse me. Our common sense is short-sighted. Don't ever look at the immediate result of something and immediately jump and say, God is good, it's a blessing. God is always good. Just always say God is good. But don't say like, oh, this is a blessing. See the fruits of it. How many of us have gotten jobs and we're like, this job is the worst thing ever? Who got in a relationship? This relationship is the worst thing ever. We get in a relationship like, God answered my prayer. We get a job, God answered my prayer. Look at the fruits of it. God operates in the long run. He operates far-sighted, like what happens years after. He's orchestrating a big plan. We only think short-minded, short-term. Oh, she's pregnant. Blessing. No. A lot of people are hurt because of this. She becomes pregnant. And Sarah says, I need you to leave. Abraham and Sarah start fighting. Abraham's like, it's your fault. Sarah's like, no, it's your fault. Abraham's like, fine, what do you want to do? Sarah's like, I'm going to send her away. Fine, go. Sarah sends her away. You see how his sin impacted an innocent woman? This is a very sad, she's like the most miskin person in the Bible, by the way. It's a very, very sad, tragic story. And so she's leaving pregnant by herself. Who's going to protect her? She's crying. She has nobody. She's an Egyptian. She doesn't know who God is, but God sees all, and he's just. And he appears to her. He appears to her, and he says to her, where are you going? Where are you going? She says, I don't know. I've been sent away. He's like, no, I want you to go back, and I want you to submit to Sarah. What? I want you to go submit to Sarah. And I will make your descendants more than the stars in the sky as well. See how good God is? He's just. He saw her tears, but he says submit to her. Why? Now, Hagar, you're in this little plan. You found your way in this. But now, you're not just going to stay along for the ride. I'm going to transform you too. I want you to submit to Sarah. Submit to your enemy. Submit to the person who did you dirty, because that's Christ-like. You'll be transformed in that process. I want you to do it. You're in this process now. We're all in it together. He blesses her. By the way, this is like the first like baby mama drama in history. Like literally, like this is the first one. It's a very messy story. It's a very messy story. But anyway, she comes back, and we'll see next week how that relationship looks, how that household looks. We'll stop right there. Forgive me for the time I took. What's about next?